I'm Alan Collinsworth, and welcome to Corridor 39. Today we will look westward from Turkey towards the European Union, and specifically Greece. Turkey is the economic bridge between developed European markets and emerging Asia. Its proximity to these markets and its labor force makes it an optimal manufacturing center and logistics hub. But Europe's political fickleness and economic chaos on its Mediterranean rim have faded Turkey's EU accession appetite. How Turkey-EU relations impact Turkey's economy is the theme of today's program. Our first guest is Didem Akyol, Turkey analyst from the Brussels-based International Crisis Group. Didem, thank you for being with us.
Thank you for having me.
In 2004, Turkey became a candidate country to join the European Union. Now, in the last few years, that process seems to have stalled. Where does the status of Turkey in the EU currently stand?
Well, as you mentioned, Turkey officially became a candidate country in 2004, and this coincided with an increase in Turkey's economic performance that was prompted very much by the prospect of EU membership and the reforms that came with this process. Unfortunately, after that, in between 2004 and 2007, actually, if you look at just the foreign direct investment data that came into Turkey, you can see that it went from something like $3 billion to about $20 billion. So just that impact is visible in that sense. Since then, both because of some domestic complications, not domestic complications, but domestic situation in Turkey, including, a loss of appetite on the part of AKP for further reform after 2005, partly because they were busy with life and death matters for themselves, such as a closure case that was being carried out against the AK Party at the time. And also external factors such as EU's internal divisions and a hostility in some EU governments such as France and Germany against Turkey's membership affected affected EU's appeal in Turkey and also Turkey's appeal in EU. So while neither side is 100% to blame, it is true that the process came to a standstill. In this context, I think the most important factor is obviously the Cyprus problem. So technically, the issue is at a standstill, and there seems to be no way to overcome this deadlock until Turkey can unblock some of these chapters by fulfilling some of the obligations, including, towards Cyprus, including implementing a customs union obligation that it had signed in 2005. So that's where the process is currently. Unfortunately, there doesn't seem to be much interest on both sides to revive this deadlocked process at this point, and that's what we as Crisis Group in our latest reports and in our briefings try to underline, is that the Turkish leaders should remember that the EU is still the main pillar for reforms in Turkey. About 1/3 of the 1982 constitution was reformed in the EU convergence process, and there's still a lot to be done in terms of reform in Turkey, and EU is still the main benchmark to do these by. I'm talking about improvements in judiciary, freedom of expression, reforming the education system, even in terms of writing a new constitution. The EU still remains a very important pillar, and it would be a mistake to assume that that relationship has sort of outrun its benefits.
Barış Tunçsipir joins us in the studio now. Barış is an investment professional based here in Istanbul. Barış, thank you for being with us.
Thank you for having me.
Didem just discussed with us how the EU process has been the major driver for Turkey's reforms. And the investment community has seen this as a process of creating a level playing field for foreign investment. Now, with Turkish reforms stalling, is this going to affect investment flows in any way?
Good question, Alan. Basically, investment is, of course, going to continue only because of the Turkish dynamics. But to be frank, the European accession talks were an important driving force behind the rise of the Turkish economy and direct investments. As you have rightly said, first of all, unfair competition and other aspects like a transparent justice system, efficiently running institutions are incredibly important for foreign investors, not only for foreign direct investors, but of course also for financial investors in the stock market. Of course, I can safely say that the stock market itself is very well organized and is very efficient vis-a-vis most of its European counterparts. But when we look at the investment flows from Europe as a total, it certainly will have a stalling effect.
How does Turkey becoming more integrated in the European Union, how does that affect its economic ties with its eastern neighbors?
If you look at Turkey's recent policy in the Middle East, you can see that, especially with its neighbors in that region, what Turkey has been doing recently is trying to recreate the post-war environment that the EU created in Europe, mainly by through integration, through interdependence, economic interdependence, infrastructure interdependence, through creating these high-level cooperation councils, free trade agreements, visa-free areas with its neighbors. It's trying to establish what the EU did for a war-torn region after the Second World War. In that sense, EU actually became a model for Turkey to implement in its region. And secondly, Turkish leaders and EU leaders should remember that if there is a single factor that makes Turkey stand out in this relatively volatile region, it is its EU convergence process. None of the other countries in the Middle East can even imagine being where Turkey is today, having the ties that Turkey does with the EU and with NATO and with the West. And this, I think, adds an enormous, or gives an enormous boost to Turkey's regional charisma and to Turkey's credibility in the region and its attractiveness and its stability. So in that sense, Turkey has a lot to gain. From an EU perspective, Turkey is its major Muslim partner, and it contributes greatly to its soft power in the region. And if an unhealthy relationship with Turkey would seriously damage the soft power and would seriously damage its credibility in a predominantly Muslim region.
Looking 360 degrees from Turkey, to the west you have Greece and economic chaos. You have volatility in the Caucasus. In Iran, you have trade-sanctioned Iran, war-torn Iraq, the Arab awakening in Syria, which is causing instability there, and so on. Now, Turkey is within 1,000 miles, let's say. It's the only place that's institutionally strong enough to sustain billion-dollar investments. Now, is that the right way to look at Turkey? Is it a star amongst troubled nations, or is it a country that's suffering from regional contagion from a problematic neighborhood?
Well, Turkish democracy is, well, not a full-fledged democracy yet maybe, but it's a very mature democracy with very mature institutions. And we certainly can see Turkey as a beacon of stability in the region. Of course, the problems in the Caucasus, as well as problems in the Middle East and Northern Africa, had its repercussions in trade relations and trade in general, the volume, especially for construction companies, for example. But on the other hand, Turkey being a stable country has also drawn a lot of funds from these countries which were seeking basically a safe haven. So therefore, I can definitely say that Turkey is actually profiting from its surrounding neighborhood and the instability, not only from increased trading opportunities because of its well-established manufacturing base, its well-established institutions which can cater these countries for products and services, but also is drawing a lot of funds from these countries.
It's not catching any downstream problems from the economic chaos in Greece?
I mean, I don't think there is any problem directly from Greece. We can look at Greece again in two aspects. One is trade relations, which is, well, minuscule to say the least. And I think it's around $2.5 billion, not more. And the other aspect, of course, is financial and the turmoil it results in. And that again is linked indirectly to Greece, because the claims of Turkish banks in Greece amount around $450 million, which isn't a lot in percentage terms. What is a bigger threat to the Turkish economy and stability is its potential repercussions to other European countries, and especially Germany. The Turkish economy is very strongly linked. The Turkish economy is very strongly linked to the German economy, trade-wise, also R&D-wise, and therefore it would be a very difficult situation for Turkey if the problems in Greece were to spill over to Germany in a wide scale. But otherwise, I don't believe that we will have any problems from Greece's economic turmoil directly.
Greece is all over the map now, and the financial market's attention has been very much on Greece and also the contagion effect it's had on Turkey. But the Turkish-Greece relations are not just about economic ties. They have some deep political rifts. Mm-hmm. What is the status of Turkish-Greece relations? If you give us a little bit of a history of what's leading up to the current situation.
Of course. As you recall, normalization between Greece and Turkey has come far since tensions threatened war about three times in the past 4 decades. In the 1970s, there were tensions, near-war situations over seismic research. In the 80s, it was oil prospecting. In the 90s, there was the Emiya Kardak crisis, where you recall the pictures of warboats on rocky islets in the Aegean. And again in 2010, there was another crisis at sea, again over seismic research or environmental research, but disputes over who entered whose territorial waters, etc. So the Aegean, first of all, between Greece and Turkey has been an area of dispute for about 4 decades. Greece-Turkey relations obviously are not just about that dispute, but that dispute has played a very important role in determining where the relations stand. In 1923, Turkey was a party to the Lausanne Peace Treaty, which established current borders with Greece. And since then, for about 50 years, the problems in the Aegean did not really cause a big conflict. When things started going really south was in after 1974, when the Cyprus crisis erupted. Athens backed a coup in Nicosia, which aimed to unify the island, this Mediterranean island, with Greece. And Turkey, using its right under the Treaty of Guarantee, intervened or invaded the northern third of the island. And the situation, the division on the island as we know it today, that's how it came about. And since then, we saw an effect of this on both Turkey-Greece relations and also, as we were discussing before, in Turkey's EU membership. And Greece, indeed, had blocked Turkey's EU candidacy up until 1999 in the Helsinki summit. That's when it changed its stance. So normalization between Greece and Turkey then started in 1999. When Greece changed its position, and also there were the earthquakes, and there was a very good